First, I'm going to draw a line, and that will be my start line. I normally use 1 inch, and the width of this ruler is already 1 inch. I'm using pencil because I'm going to erase some part out later. We're going to be working with 2 measurements today. The first one is vertical measurement. The vertical measurement is the measurement coming from us straight down, while the horizontal measurement are the measurement going across. So, number 1, my hip vertical measurement. My hip vertical measurement is 9.5 inches. So, from the shoulder down, I'm going to mark 9.5 inches. Number 2, the waist vertical measurement. My waist vertical measurement is 16 inches. From the shoulder down, I'm going to mark 16 inches. Number 3, the hip vertical measurement. My hip vertical measurement is 24 inches. From the shoulder down, I'm going to mark 24 inches. Number 4, the full length of the dress. The full length of my dress is 40 inches. From the shoulder down, I'm going to mark 40 inches, including the 1 inch for the side dart. I'm going to bring this tape to almost the end of the pattern paper, mark the same point. Why? To enable me get accurate horizontal lines. Then I'm going to roll across, label the lines so we know which is which as we go further. Shoulder line, bust line, waistline, hip line, hemline, and the center front. Number 5, the neck circumference. My neck circumference is 15 inches. When I divide 15 inches by 2, I will have 7.5. That 7.5 is what I'm going to use to draft half of the front and half of the back. To get the front neckline, I'm going to use the method of 3 by 3. With that 3 by 3, you'll be able to get the basic neckline. From that, you'll be able to create any neck that you choose to. If the neck is bigger, you can use 3¼ inches. So now I'm going to measure 3 inches at the shoulder line. And this will be the width. To find the depth, I'm going to measure 3 inches at this center front line. And I'm going to connect this point to this point with a French curve. If you don't have a French curve, please carefully maneuver it with your hand. This is just to make my tutorial faster. Number 6, the shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches. When I divide 15 inches by 2, I will have 7.5. And that 7.5, I'm going to measure it along this shoulder line. You know our shoulder is not on a straight form. It's on a slope. Because of that, I'm going to step this point down by 1.5 inches to get a slope. And I'm going to connect this point to this point. Number 7, my armhole circumference. My armhole circumference is 16 inches. When I divide 16 inches by 2, I will have 8 inches. And that 8 inches, I'm going to add half an inch for ease allowance. That will be 8.5 inches. I'm not going to measure that full 8.5 inches because when I do that, the armhole is going to be wider. So for me to get that 8.5 inches, I'm going to use 7 inches to create the armhole. Whatever measurement that you have, you minus out your slope measurement. My slope measurement is 1.5 inches. Then I'm taking 1.5 inches out of the armhole measurement. If that is not working for you, then you can shift your upper bust line up until you get your armhole correctly. Now I'm going to mark 7 inches here. Then before I remove my tape, I'm going to find the midpoint of 7 inches. The midpoint of 7 inches is 3.5 inches. I'm going to mark it here. I don't use straight line to create my armhole. I always say this because the front and the back armhole is not halfway straight, then halfway curve. Both the back and the front armhole are always on the curve. That is why I don't use straight line to create my curve. I use points and it's very easy. Then this center point now, I'm going to step it back by 3/4 inch. The front armhole is deeper than the back armhole because of the bust. Then the next thing is to draw a straight line across this point here. We're going to come back to this armhole later to finish it properly. So let's find the circumference of our bust. And this line will now serve as our upper bust. Number 8, the bust circumference. My bust circumference is 36 inches. When I divide 36 inches by 4, I will have 8.5 inches. And that 8.5 inches, I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance. Then I'll mark the same at the upper bust. I'm going to connect this point to this inner point, from this point to this point here, with a French curve. If you don't have a French curve, like I always say, please carefully maneuver it with your hand. Number 9, waist circumference. My waist circumference is 30 inches. When I divide 30 inches by 4, I will have 7.5 inches. Along this waistline, I'm going to measure the 7.5 inches. Then I'm going to add 1 inch for the dart that is going to come to this area later. That will be 8.5 inches. Then I'll be adding 1/4 of an inch for the ease allowance. That will be 8.75 inches. Number 10, the hip vertical measurement. My hip vertical measurement is 40 inches. When I divide 40 inches by 4, I'll have 10 inches. And that 10 inches, this is the 10 inches. And that 10 inches, I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance. Because it's a straight dress, I'm going to come to the hem line and mark that same measurement from the hip, which is 10 and 1/4 inches. Then I'm going to connect this point to this point, this to this point, and that to this point. Number 13, creating of the dart. To create the dart, I'm going to be using the nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 7 inches. When I divide 7 by 2, I'll have 3.5 inches. And that 3.5 inches, I'm going to measure it along this bust line here. Then I'm going to come to the hip line and measure the same. Then I'm going to connect this point to this point here. But before I connect the point, I'm going to step this point up by 2 inches. And here is the 2 inches. Then I'll come to the bust point and step it down by 2 inches because I don't want my dart to be very close to the nipple point. You can step it down by 1 inch, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to mark 2 inches here. And I will now draw the line. Along this line, the 1 inch we added to the waist area, we are going to use it now. Half an inch on this side, half an inch on the other side. And I'm going to connect this point to this point, this point to this point, this to this point, this to this point with the French curve. Number 14, creating of the side dart. To create the side dart, I'm going to measure 2.5 inches from this side seam here. I'm going to mark half an inch on this side, half an inch on this side to form the dart. Then I'll connect this center point to this nipple point here. Before I connect the points, I'm going to reduce this line by 2 inches because I don't want my dart to be so close to the nipple point. You can use 1 inch to step it back, but I'm using 2 inches. Okay. Connect this point to this point, this point to this point with a French curve. Put a little triangle at this part here. Why? So that we don't miss any fabric around this area when we are holding our dart in. To do that, you extend the center line with half an inch or 1/4 of an inch. Because it's a pattern, the next thing I need to do, I'm going to add half an inch all around it for the seam allowance. Then I add 1 inch at the bottom. As you can see, I've added the half an inch seam allowance all around it. and 1 inch at the bottom for the hemming. Now I'm going to trim it out. Before I trim it out, I'm going to fold this part to the back so that we don't miss any fabric around this area when we are sewing our garment. If you've liked what you're seeing so far, please like and subscribe. Then click the notification bell for notification, please. I use a different marker to differentiate the seam allowance from the main body. If you are going to use it to cut out a stretchy fabric, you don't need to add this seam allowance at the side. You need to add this hem allowance so that the length of your stretchy fabric will not be shortened. It's very important. Then you also need to add the shoulder allowance and the neck allowance. It's only at the side that you don't add. I'm going to rule a start line at the beginning of the pattern paper with 1 inch, like I did with the front. Then I'm also going to rule 1 inch for the zip allowance. Number 1, the bust vertical measurement. My bust vertical measurement is 9.5 inches. From the shoulder down, I'm going to mark 9.5 inches. Number 2, the waist vertical measurement. Before I mark the waist vertical measurement, I'm going to minus 1 inch away from it because of the dart in the front. The dart is not in the back. So instead of marking 16, I'll mark 15 inches. Then number 3, the hip vertical measurement. My hip vertical measurement is 23 inches at the back. But in the front, it was 24 because of the dart. I'm going to mark 23 inches. Then number 4, the full length of the dress. The full length of my dress in the front was 40 inches. But now at the back, I'm going to mark 39 inches. Now the final full length of the dress is going to be 39 inches, no longer 40 inches. It was 40 inches in the front because of the 1 inch dart. Then I'll bring my tape to almost the end of the pattern paper and mark the same wide to have accurate horizontal lines. Now I'm going to rule out the lines, label the lines so we know which is which as we go further. I've labeled the lines. This is the shoulder line, bust line, waist line, hip line, hem line. Number 5, the neck circumference. I'm going to measure 3 at the shoulder line for the width of the neck. Then I'll mark just 1 inch for the depth of the neck because the front neck is more deeper than the back neck. Connect this point to this point. Number 6, the shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches. When I divide 15 inches by 2, I'll have 7.5. Along the shoulder line, I'm going to mark 7.5. This point, I'm going to slope it by 1.5 inches. You can use 1 inch, depends on how high your shoulder is. Connect this point to this point. Number 7, the armhole circumference. My armhole circumference is 16 inches. When I divide 16 inches by 2, I will have 8 inches. And that 8 inches, I'm going to add half an inch for ease allowance. That will be 8.5 inches. I'm not going to use 8.5 inches to create armhole. If I do that, the armhole will be bigger. I'm going to use 7 inches to create the armhole, like I did with the front. Then, before I remove my tape, I'm going to find the midpoint. The midpoint of 7 inches is 3.5 inches. This is this point here. Then I'm going to be stepping the center point back with just half an inch because the front armhole is deeper than the back armhole. Then I'm going to rule a straight line across this point here. Then before we finish the armhole, let's find the circumference of the bust line. Number 8, the bust circumference. My bust circumference is 36. When I divide 36 inches by 4, I'll have 8.5 inches. And that 8.5 inches, I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch for ease allowance. Measure the same at the upper bust. Then now I'm going to connect this point to this inner point, this point to this point with a French curve. I don't use a straight line to create my armhole. The front and the back armhole is not halfway straight and halfway curved. The back and the front armhole always, I repeat, always on the curve. So I'm going to connect this point to this point to that point. You don't need a straight line to connect your points. The points are vivid enough for you to connect. If you are used to halfway straight, halfway curve with a straight line, please, you have to think again. Number 9, waist circumference. My waist circumference is 30 inches. When I divide 30 inches by 4, I will have 7.5. This is the 7.5. This 7.5, I'm going to add 1 inch for the dart. That will be 8.5 inches. Then I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch for the ease allowance. That will be 8.75 inches. Number 10, the hip circumference. My hip circumference is 40 inches. When I divide 40 inches by 4, I will have 10 inches. On that 10 inches, I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch to it. That will be 10.25 inches. I'll mark. Then I'll come to the M line and mark the same. Now I'm going to connect this point to this point, this point to this point, this point to that point. Number 13, creating of the dart. To create the dart, we're still going to use the nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 7. When I divide 7 by 2, I'll have 3.5 inches. So I'm going to measure that 3.5 inches at the bust line. And I'm still going to measure the 3.5 inches at the hip line. I'm going to connect this point to this point. Before I connect the points, I'm going to step up this point up with 2 inches to free our hip area. Then this point, I'm going to put it up with 1/2 inch because there's no bust at the back. It's only at the front. So the excess that is going to be at the back, we'll take it in by shifting the dart upwards. From here now, I'll draw the line. The 1 inch we added to the waist earlier, we're going to use it now. 1/2 inch on this side, 1/2 inch on this side at the waist line. Then I connect this point to this point, this point to this point, this to this point, and this to this point with a French curve. To take the buckiness at the waistline, at the zip side out, measure 1/2 inch away from the beginning of the line. I'll connect this point to this point. I'll connect this point to this point. You measure from here 1 inch. Connect this point to this point to that point. This is why I did not rule this part with a marker, because I'm going to clean this line out now. The next thing is to add half an inch seam allowance all around it, 1 inch at the hem line. Then I'll trim it out. Fold this part to the back before you trim, so that you don't miss any fabric at the beginning of the side seam. This is the finishing touch of the dress pattern. This is the back, and this is the front. As you can see, the final result came out extremely perfect. This is the end of this tutorial. If you like this video, please give me thumbs up. If you've not subscribed to this channel, please try and do so. If you have any question whatsoever, please don't forget to leave it at the comment section below. I'll be more than glad to answer any of your questions to the best of my knowledge. And help share this video so that others can know what is happening on this channel. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. God bless you.